How's things in the Stranglers world?
They're calm at the moment. We're starting rehearsing next week in the UK. But at the moment, I'm in my music room here. And there's a jukebox I've been working on for a year. Can you see
Okay,
it?
what? Yeah, I can see it. What you do with the jukebox is it?
Rebuilding it because it's a 1960 jukebox, and a lot of the material in it is 1960 records, and it was in a bad state. I've put most of it together. It's really quite a complicated thing round the back. It's all electric, and I don't know if you've seen it,
Oh
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's with the help of an engineer bloke I know around here. I've been redoing it. It's sort of quite therapeutic, but it's great, when it works. It's a stereo. It's the first stereo jukebox, 1960.
So that's worth a few quid. An antique like
It will.
yourself.
I think it will be when I fixed it, but it's not quite. You've got to find parts.
Yeah. I mean,
Moreover,
what's on there? What tunes have you got on there? Is it going to be a lot
oh
of 60s blues boom?
yeah, a lot of 60s stuff, pre-blues boom, a lot of 60s pop stuff.
French chanson?
I'm going to put some French. There's none at the moment, but yeah, I want to put some French chanson on.
A few tangos, maybe?
And there's the Yardbirds on it, which can't be bad. Because,
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
as you know, I'm a member of the Yardbirds now.
Didn't know that.
Well, not really.
Yeah.
I Jim McCarthy, who was the drummer of the Yardbirds, lives just down the road from me. So he's 80, and he's fucking great. So we've got a blues band with him and me, and we're called Strange Bird, and we play little villages around here. The Goat Fair.
So is this a grown-up version of the Purple Helmet?
Yeah.
The book. So I've heard about this book for a long time. The actual gestation of it's been a couple of years. I mean, I remember reading about the French version of it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So what's the whole process from beginning to now?
Well, it started off during the lockdown, and I was approached by this young French guy who's a historian. Anyway, that's his job. He's a member of the, he's French civil service. He, in fact, is a guide at the Basilique Saint-Denis, which is where all the French kings have been buried. So he's into history and facts and stuff. And he approached me because he'd done a book called Black and White, analysing the album. I mean, how esoteric can you get, So we started chatting, and I told him I didn't want to do a chronological biography, but I did want to do a thematic book, which was biographical. And because over years I'd enjoyed the look on journalists' faces when I told them the 5 things that I'd maintained, the 5 loves I'd maintained since I was a teenager, which was, music, motorbikes, martial arts, marijuana, masturbation. And that was always, and the masturbation bit always made journalists blush. So I quite enjoyed the effect. So he said, okay, let's start like that. And then he developed some other M's other than the 5 original M's. So I think there's 12 or 11 or 12 anyway. So that's how we proceeded. And we'd spend 2 hours every week talking. And his questions, he obviously knew the Stranglers so well that he knew which buttons to press, for what questions. So I've only answered his questions. I haven't sort of added any extra. So I'll keep that for the next book. No, he said what questions to ask. And so I thought it was about time, at my venerable age, I could sort of share a story with people, rather than waiting till I was 30 and to coincide with the release of an album or something to bring a, these fucking footballers, they're 25 years old and they do biographies,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, the rest of life's got no story in it, so they have to get that bit in. I mean,
So we proceeded from that. So it was 18 months of Zoom meetings, about 2 hours a week, which filled in quite a lot of the time during the lockdown, to be honest.
And what was interesting about it, I mean, the last, the other Stranglers books, I remember famously the one that was written a few years ago, and your quote was that I didn't realise I was such a psychopath. But this book actually presents a far more complex and nuanced version. I mean, obviously the psychopath bits are in there, but there's a lot more to it, a lot more layers to you, which this book actually presents in the interview form.
Well, I think, John, I think everyone has more layers than given credit, and it's only, it's only media or how people want to reveal of themselves. That we're all complex characters, all human beings are. So an artist is no different. A musician, a rocker like me is no different. So but obviously there's a bit of interest in a person because you've been in a shop window for a lot of your life. So I thought I should reveal myself and not name drop too much, unlike some people who mention, yes, I was in a hotel with Bono, and then for fuck's sake.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird chapter in that book.
That was you don't learn anything about the person.
I felt yours was actually very, very open. In a way,
I've got nothing to hide, and I've got I'm not hiding behind any image or trying to preserve mystique. I'm interesting enough without that.
Well, that's what the end point of that. And if you actually do have something to present, then if you're open, it actually makes the subject more fascinating.
Well, I just answered the questions,
I mean, what was he trying to do this when he interviewed you? Did he have an idea what kind of book that he was trying to write, or was it just kind of wrote itself?
I think it kind of wrote itself. I mean, you ask a question, and if it's a pertinent thing, I mean, he must have done a lot of homework. It's obvious he did a lot of homework to know which buttons to push, and as a catalyst for me to gush or not,
I mean, was there any bits you go, right, you didn't put that in?
No, no. I thought I said to him from the start, you're a journalist. I don't censor, as long as you interpret honestly what I'm sharing with you. So there were no agendas on his part. He just wanted to put it down, the actual answers, and I thought it would give me a bit of freedom to the English expression, revenge is a dish best served cold. I thought I'd put things, put my side of things. Not that it's of any great interest to anyone, but people who are into the Stranglers might want to know.
Oh yeah, but your version of these stories about former members.
Well, especially that, yeah.
Mm. I mean, I thought you're quite generous to Hugh through most of the book. I think there's obviously as time goes on, inevitably any group, people grow, don't they, in different directions.
Well, of course they do, yeah. People in general, even couples, you start out in love and everything, two people wanting to share their life, and then things happen. Your lives don't run in parallel. So at some point, you might suddenly realize that you're incompatible. You're not, no longer on the same, thinking from the same sort of hymn sheet, to coin a cliche, but same with bunches of people, with musicians, bands. You don't always grow altogether at the same rate.
I mean, with you and with their band, I mean, that there was a closeness there as well, wasn't there? It wasn't just a musical colleague, was it? There was a tightness.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and which is great, which has resulted in a lot of creativity. I mean, I don't know how long. How's Goldblade going, by the way?
So looking at the book, I mean, your relationship with the Stranglers itself changes over the years, doesn't it? I mean, there's been periods when when you join the band, you like the young guy in the band, and then there's then you're like the joint frontman of the band, etc. Like now, you're kind of the elder statesman in the band, and do you when you talk through the book, when you do the interviews, do you think about that the way your role has changed?
Of course, yeah, yeah, and it's bound to happen, isn't it? If I'm the last man standing of the original lineup. What I find quite interesting is that the band, if you want, still has a credibility despite only one original member being. So it says something to me about sometimes you'd say, oh no, it's not the same band. It's not the same because Jet's gone, Dave's gone, Hugh's gone. But there's a sort of continuity, which I think is quite a rare thing. From a punter's point of view, why should they still come and see the Stranglers? So there's some kind of credibility despite personnel changes,
I mean, do you see your role now? I mean, like, through talk about it in the book, do you see your role in a sense as being the gatekeeper?
Well, I think I'm aware of a certain legacy and a certain credibility that is viewed from the outside, and I want to maintain that as long as possible, as long as I've got a creative breath in me, and fortunately, I'm surrounded by a creative bunch. They're not just it's not a karaoke band, and then so they've got something to contribute, and I don't know. That is something I couldn't have prescribed. It's just happened. It's the luck of the draw, I'd say. And obviously, you choose who you want to be around, or choose who you want to collaborate with you. And the choices that we've made since the changes in personnel seem to have worked. But you never know, do you? Until you try it.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with next, the next album. The lineup is strong enough to make a really interesting record.
I think so, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see, John. Nothing's in concrete. Nothing's set. But yeah, trust me.
Yeah, it's down to the gatekeeper. So the other thing is always I mean, we talked about this before, but the sense of being the outsider. I think something that's very core to you as a person, isn't it? There's a great quote in the book about you being the most French Englishman and the most English Frenchman, sort of somewhere in between the two. The Channel Islands, I don't know, always been on the outside. I mean, have you finally found your home after all this decades, or do you still feel slightly on the outside?
Yeah, slightly. I mean, my home is the Stranglers, really. I mean, I live in France now. And it wasn't completely through choice, I kind of circumstances led to this. And I won't go into those in this, but but I'm quite happy here. I'm treated with a lot of respect. The local cops want me to train them. So that's good. I'm on my side. It's I can ride my motorcycle most days of the year here. It's got over 300 days of sunshine. London's not far away. It's only an hour and a half flight. So everything's okay. But my home is the Stranglers. I think that's sort of the nearest I've got to a home.
It's always seen those you were seeking something, for reading the book, like there's a biker gang and there's always.
I wanted to belong to something. Yeah, I wanted to belong to something. when I was 15 or 16, because we did combined cadets at school, I thought, oh yeah, okay, be an officer, join the army, you know, like a couple of my friends did eventually. But at the time, I couldn't because my parents were French. It's different now. They'll have anyone.
I mean, your description of your father in the interviews, it's almost like a mirror reflection of you.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought of that, John. Yeah. So yeah, Dad. Yeah.
But it's interesting. And everything you're involved is always a contradiction, I think, which makes it interesting. So you're in a biker gang, but you could play, you know, the time in the 70s, but you could play classical guitar, you like classical music, not your typical biker. You didn't seem to be like your typical anything.
Well,
at any point. You're always out of sync with whichever gang you join. It's not really the right gang.
Yeah, but the thing is, yeah, you say that, but you're actually dealing with cliches, aren't you? Really? See,
Yes.
you're not a typical biker, right? Because I'm not fat and I don't have a beard. Or, you know, what is you see, it goes back to our opening conversation here today. What is typical? Everyone's got so many layers to them. You know, if I'm a stranger and I'm walking down the street and I see you, what am I going to think? You think, fucking weird. Look at that fucking tuft on his head. I'm across the road. He looks dangerous. But you're right. Your opening sentence was, we're all much more layered. And I think that's true. So yeah, I don't subscribe to the cliches.
The other thing that came over in the book was in the interviews is I think you had to learn to be tough, didn't you? You know, you weren't. You know, like when you're in school.
I'm not naturally tough. Yeah.
No, that's what you know. Like that great photograph of you when you're a child. You know, like
yeah.
And you do look like a precocious, like a lot of us were at the time. You know, but a skinny, young, precocious kid who had to learn to put a shell on to survive, really.
Yeah, and also because I didn't have a broken nose and tattoos and big muscles and everything, you know, that always helps, doesn't it? You know, because people think, nah, I don't think I'll go. Whereas with me, I was quite a cutie when I was much younger. So, you know, yeah, right. You know, people had to fight all the time. I would have preferred to avoid it. So you learn to be tough.
But did you enjoy that kind of persona when you became that persona?
For a while, I enjoyed it, but then after that, I felt it. It detracted from the Stranglers, and in general, the Stranglers, what we got involved with, sort of, it took focus off what we really wanted to do, is just play music and write music, you know. So there's always that. But I didn't. I enjoyed. At one point, we had a thing called what was it called? The Balance of Terror. The Stranglers had the Balance of Terror. So, you know, and I kind of enjoyed that because the reputation went ahead of us. So sometimes it avoided having to beat people up or having a punch up or anything. Just people just acquiesced, and that was quite enjoyable for a while after having been rejected by everything, you know, and the media and our peers even. So yeah, I enjoyed that for a while, but it kind of, it doesn't help you engage with people. And you know, ultimately, you, me, all of us musicians, we want to engage with people. We want to form a communion. That's what we do, isn't it?
Oh yeah, completely. And I'm talking to music as well. There's some great chats about the music in the book, and it really unpacks the Stranglers as being far more than what people thought. You know, what people still think. I mean, obviously a great band. We know all that side of it. But when you talk about classical music and the other influences you're bringing in there, there's much more to the Stranglers than just a straight band, isn't it? It's something quite unique.
Well, I think so. I mean, every band's unique because it's made up of unique individuals. However, a lot of the time, that uniqueness is diluted by an attempt to be successful, commercial. So suddenly they sound like everyone else, you know. And I've always been fascinated by what people produce creatively, in our case, music, in your case, music, is that we're all unique individuals. So how come the product of that uniqueness sometimes just becomes the same as lots of other things? You know, you lose your unique voice in an attempt to fit in.
And has that always been something that's been driving you? You know, you made music even to this day, into the last album. You know, it's that thing where there's a discipline there to make something that has to be you, or the band, or the people you work with at that point in time.
Yeah, but how difficult that is with all the influences around you, the things that you your rationale takes over your instinct, and that's wrong. That instinct should dominate your rationale, because your rationale says, "Oh no, I don't want to do that. That's been done," or no, it doesn't sound contemporary, or blah blah blah. That's your rationale. But you just go with your instinct. That's what my master always says. That's why we're still here as a race, you know, human race. That we your gut instinct. So have you ever disliked someone on first meeting them, and you don't know why? You don't know why, and your friends say they haven't done anything to you. What's wrong? But you something tells you, your gut reaction, and that's a really difficult thing to keep hold of or to be in touch with.
And is that something that's core to you as a person? I think it is, isn't it?
I try to converse with my instinct. It's not always easy.
I think musically it's quite telling. I think there's endless arguments on Strang's message boards about how you always put the wrong single out at any given time. I always thought you always put the right single out in a sense, you know. But you know, La Folie was a brilliant choice of a single because you're running on instinct. It felt right, therefore it's right.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
It wasn't a commercial move, was it? And that's what kind of taught the band apart in the end, when it is, you know, the original lineup, people move in with different motivations, and it's fine. You know, it's okay people to have a commercial motivation because they want to survive, etc. It's not the way you wanted to work, is it?
Well, not always. You're making a statement when you release a single, I hope. Well, we've talked about this before. You know, I think when you make a commercial decision, it's the tail wagging the dog. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the dog should be wagging the tail. And then if it happens to be successful, it's a bonus. But it's not the be all and end all. If it is, it starts eating away at you and starts destroying you. It's like I don't know if you know Lord of the Rings. Every time you wear the ring, it takes a little bit of your soul away. It's like heroin or something, you know. It gives you that thing, but then it takes even more away from you. So it's toxic eventually if you just do things for successful commercial reasons.
I mean, doing those interviews, and they're very in-depth interviews, and I'm sure the book's only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, they're probably some of the most in-depth interviews you've ever done. And did you find out anything about yourself from doing
them? No, but I think, you know, you start remembering things and then you start analysing it again, but from your more recent point of view. Then suddenly you start
thinking, why did I do that?
Why the fuck did I do that? Or exactly. You start questioning yourself, but that's all part of what we should all be doing anyway. So.
I mean, and did you bring any of that? You know, because you obviously dwelling in a past mentality when you're doing a book like that. Because I know the book comes all the way up to date. But does any of that come into what you're doing now as well? Do you think maybe I've drifted a little too far away from the madness to like return back to it? or do you enjoy the way you're doing now?
I'm enjoying who I am at the moment. I hope that as we all get older, we start looking at ourselves and how we engage with the rest of the world in a different way. It's obvious, of course we do. They've recently come out with scientists have recently come out with the conclusion that the human brain is not matured until about 25 years old. So that would explain an awful lot of the memories we do when we're in our teens, And also, as you get older, it's difficult not to engage with other human beings. So suddenly, sometimes those other human beings you're engaged with, you have a responsibility to. So that changes your dynamic as well and your psychology.
Does that affect your creativity?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, hopefully anything, any change in one's internal wiring will affect your creativity. Not necessarily in a good way, but it will affect your creativity, of course. You're not writing the same stuff as you did 30 years ago, are you?
No.
You're not looking at the world in the same way you did 30 years ago. And I think that's just a natural process. And be honest about it, because an awful lot of, a few musicians I could mention still want to be that lycra, skinny person of yesteryear, and that looks terrible. It's like guys dyeing their hair, when they're past 60. It's not a good look.
I mean, there was a maturity to the last album, and it works. There's a maturity and a wisdom to the last album, which I think works very well.
Well, I hope so. I mean, but everyone should be honest when they write music, and people will feel it. People will know. Human beings aren't stupid.
So, I mean, with a book like this, is this going to be it? Is this the book? Is this get the dreaded autobiography out of the way, or are you going to return to it at some point?
I don't.
When you can't tour anymore, when you're 90.
What do you mean I can't tour anymore when I'm 90?
I know I've seen people over 90 touring.
I don't think anyone will be interested in an autobiography by me. I mean, this is biographical. I think it's sufficient. I think the other stuff can be extraneous, a bit boring. I was born blah blah blah.